trouble. And you want me about right here? All right, and then you kind of want me to lean back this direction.
Just a bit,
right?
yeah.
Just because I'm going to invent our own light here.
Invent the light here. Yeah, exactly. Now I'm rolling.
Great. We should be all right unless they flip on some lights.
What's the state? What's the program?
The program is called Tech Now. It's a
Right.
syndicated technology program that runs here in the Bay Area and
Right.
in the Far East. And
Right.
so we'll talk about your book for a little bit, and then about your vision of the future, which you're going to deliver.
Right.
Yes. So think of the vision really quick.
Okay. Yeah. Vision. The vision thing.
Tell me, for people that have heard of your book. Your book is a bit like Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. People have heard of it. They haven't necessarily read it, but they know of it. What sort of impression do you want people to have of your work?
I really want them to have the impression that they should go out and buy it and read it. That's. It's what can I say? I mean, one thing I'd like to correct. People think it's some kind of vision of the future, which it isn't. I'm not in the field of predictive science fiction. I'm not a kind of latter-day Arthur Clarke. It's very much about using the ideas of science fiction and so on to look at us right here and now. So essentially, it's got its feet probably more firmly planted in the area of satire and social comedy, I guess, than science fiction. But at the same time, I mean, inadvertently, just because there were certain narrative problems I had to solve, I invented this thing called The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which turns out to be tremendously like, where PDAs are going, and I invented sort of automatic translation and so on and so forth. And I mean, not because I was as I say, trying to be predictive, but simply because there are narrative problems you have to solve.
The British seem particularly good at satire. Is that a fair assessment?
I guess so. I mean, I think it's very important for the British to have a preemptive sense of why we're ridiculous before anybody else gets in there.
What's ahead for you as far as if I'm your biggest fan and I've read every single book, what comes next for me?
Well, a bunch of different things. I mean, in fact, I've been quite quiet for a while because I've been busy losing my shirt in the digital economy like everybody else. And I've also been very busy for years and years and years getting a feature movie made out of Hitchhiker, which is constantly about to be made. It's been about to be made now for about 20 years, and I would say it's probably eaten up about 10 years of my life. And the good news is we're about to make it yet again. So watch this space. It'll be along any decade now. But actually I'm turning my mind back to novels again at the moment, having been doing computer games and websites and all kinds of different stuff. I mean, largely because I've sort of run out of ideas for novels at one point, because my novels tend to sort of use up ideas at a fairly ferocious rate. So I kind of needed to go and get a little bit more life experience for a while. And as a result, I've now got a sort of wonderful, great backlog of new ideas. So basically, I hope you're going to be seeing a lot more books over the next few years.
I think people would be disappointed if I didn't ask you that the meaning of life is 42 then.
Well, to put it more specifically, the way it's actually couched is, I'm sorry I'm going to be very pedantic about this, but
Please?
I'm British and we are pedantic. It's the answer to the ultimate question of life, the universe and everything is 42. And the big issue is, therefore, what is the question? And all I can say is that in a quantum universe, it's impossible to know both the question and the answer. So.
That's very deep. Tell me about you were going to.
No, it isn't.
You've been assigned to speak about the future.
Yeah. A subject about which all of us know absolutely nothing.
Right.
So it gives me a license to sort of stand up and natter about whatever comes into my mind for an hour.
What do you suspect you will natter about?
Well, I mean, in fact, we're living in terribly interesting times at the moment, not least of which is because what we've all thought was about to happen has kind of become slightly derailed. which is actually no bad thing, because essentially what we were sort of pushing forward with new versions of old technology, and the whole point is we've got to rethink it, we've got to continually rethink and reinvent, because we are moving into fundamentally different models of how we work, think, eat and live together. And essentially I think what we've got to sort of shuffle off is the idea of there's all sorts of bad habits we've accrued in the 20th century. There's a clue to that, which is that at the end of the 20th century, we came up with this exciting new buzzword, which is interactive. The interesting thing about the word interactive is that the 20th century is the only time we've actually needed such a word, because it's the only time we've been surrounded by non-interactive forms of communication and entertainment, like CDs, videos, cinema, radio, television, all that kind of stuff that however you react to it, it doesn't react to your reaction. Now you go back to the 19th century and any time in human history before then, and it was predominantly interactive. You'd perform to audiences and so on and so forth, and everybody was in touch with everybody else. So that's what we kind of lost in the 20th century, so effectively we can't do what we used to do simply because there are now so damn many of us. But what our technologies are beginning to do is put us back in touch with each other much more intimately in ways that we used to be, and that's what we've got to kind of readjust to. So I mean, I think the 20th century, with all of its non-interactivity and its kind of totalitarian forms of control from the sort of top down, will suddenly seem like a sort of nasty memory. And I think that the technologies of the 21st century are basically recreating on much larger scale the intimacies of previous forms of human experience.
We've lusted after gadgets for their gadgetry.
Yeah, well, I know, I do that a lot myself. But the thing is, I mean, I've got so many gadgets back at home, and I've got one cupboard full of gadgets, another cupboard full of power adapters, and I don't know which goes with which, and it's that kind of. And after a while you begin to wonder if these companies are actually, rather like Xerox, which as we know is not actually in the business of making photocopiers, it's in the business of selling toner cartridges. And when you wonder whether sort of Sony and everybody else are actually in the business of selling power supplies, because every time you get a new thing, you lose the power supply. You can't remember which one goes with which, and you have to go and buy another one. And so it's this kind of sort of all this stuff gets in the way. It's obstructive. It means that this technology is deeply flawed. I mean, Danny Hillis, the great computer scientist, said a wonderful thing. He said, technology is our name for stuff that doesn't work yet. And you can identify stuff that doesn't work yet by the fact it's got some power supply which may or may not have a negative tip or a positive tip, and you've got to figure that out. And it comes in a box full of junk, full of bits of paper and manuals and installers that won't run on your machine, and little clips that you then lose and then discover 2 weeks later what they were for. All this stuff basically means this doesn't work yet. When this technology is like a chair or a pen, and we can forget all that and just use it, that's when stuff will be beginning to work. And I feel that what we've been seeing in this sort of the turmoil of the last few months has been the sudden realization that we've overpromised and under-delivered, and we've got to sort this stuff out, because the public won't stand for it anymore.
Stop there. Bart, is there a way to get it?
No, I guess. I mean, I'm unfortunately one of those authors who the name of whose work is actually slightly better known than their own name,
Yes, no, that's the Zen art of Zen of motorcycle maintenance.
Robert Pirsig, since you were going to ask.
I couldn't. Yes, of course. The whole thing.
Yeah.
Right. All right. Well, wave your hands about and make an interesting point. What did you do before you wrote your first book?
I basically starved.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually working for radio and back in England, radio and a little bit of television. We're very lucky in England because radio, which is a medium of very low cost, can't pay anybody very much, and therefore provides a very, very easy learning curve and an easy entry point into the media. I mean, I learned most of what I really value about what I learned about writing. It's kind of disappeared in the rest of the world. So it can be a very sort of fertile ground for sort of learning and experimenting, because the costs are less, the risks are less than something that's going to go on television.
I've always admired radio reporters because they can take what we use as pictures and actually describe it in your head.
And the picture